By 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning, the results of Lok Sabha elections 2024 were quite clear. BJP had emerged as the single largest party, but it had fallen short of the magic mark of 272. It was nowhere close to getting a simple majority on its own. After a decade, India was back to coalition era. There was disbelief within the BJP and much cheer in the opposition camp. This is the Economic Times Special Elections podcast, Polls on My Pod. In this episode, we will analyze the election results, their impact on economic policy of Modi 3.0, the future of smaller political parties, and how are the markets expected to behave. It is Thursday, the 6th of June. From the Economic Times, I'm your host Nidhi Sharma, and you're listening to the Morning Brief. India has finally wrapped up its long 7-phase election, which started on April 19th and ended on 1st of June. And what an election it was. Some in our newsroom very smartly summed it as the defeat of exit polls. Not a single exit poll predicted the crushing defeat of BJP in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra, or the trust people reposed in regional parties like Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress in Bengal or DMK and India Bloc in Tamil Nadu. The biggest surprise for the ruling BJP was that its survival at the centre would now be dependent on two whimsical allies, Telugu Desam Party chief N. Chandrababu Naidu and Janata Dal United's Nitish Kumar, well known for his numerous kalabazis from one camp to the other. Economist and ET's columnist Swaminathan Iyer summed up the election in our front page article. A win by any margin is just as sweet. He said, rarely has an election ended with the losers celebrating more than the winners. This is how it was. Though the opposition's India Bloc could not form the government, it was happy that it restricted BJP under 250. A far cry from Modi's 400 par call. But what can we expect now at the centre? Prime Minister Narendra Modi may have equaled Jawaharlal Nehru's record of winning 3 consecutive terms at the centre, but he is saddled with the tough task of keeping slippery allies happy. This would mean that allies would employ strong-arm tactics to extract their pound of flesh in terms of cabinet berths, special status for their states, and big investment projects. Would it impact the government's economic policy and how it functions at the centre? I discussed this and more with Mr. Swaminathan Iyer. Welcome to the Morning Brief, sir. So, how do you see the election results?
Well, politically, it's a revelation. It would appear that Mr. Modi can no longer ride roughshod over all other political parties and members of his own party. We appear to be back in coalition Raj once again. The BJP has fallen far, far short of an absolute majority on its own. It is resting on two crutches, one called Nitish Kumar, the other called Chandrababu Naidu. I think this time they will make sure that they get their pound of flesh before they will give in and allow Mr. Modi to have his way on some issues. There's a major change on the political side. It would seem very clear that, India is no longer heading for a Hindu autocracy, as was one of the great fears, that the constitution will be amended every which way, there will be simultaneous elections, they will take socialism and secularism out of I mean, all kinds of speculation on what might happen. Goodbye to all those. Mr. Modi is going to be having a problem getting his own coalition colleagues together, let alone getting a constitutional majority. So none of that is going to happen. So you are not going to see any fireworks out there. On the economic side, the truth is that the BJP manifesto did not promise any radical change. The BJP manifesto basically said, look, Modi is a great guy. Look what he's done for the poor. Look what he's done for exports. Look what he's done for manufacturing. And we are going to do more of the same. It promised scaling up. It promised new sectors, perhaps. It did not promise a U-turn. It did not promise a sharp left turn, right turn. It basically said, we have done very well so far and we are going to give you more of the same. Will either Chandrababu Naidu or Nitish Kumar come in the way of that? No, I don't think so. I think they will also be quite happy. I mean, Nitish is a socialist. He would have been opposed perhaps to privatization, but I don't think the government is proposing privatization. They are just having some disinvestment, and that is okay with everybody.
So, what do you think about change in terms of economic policy?
What all have they been doing? Number one, they've been increasing public sector capex. This has been a very important phenomenon in Modi too, and it has helped get the economy up. If we did 8.2% GDP growth last year, it was certainly because of sustained BJP capex for 3 years. Will they continue to do that? Yes, I'm sure they will continue to do that. How will they finance it? I think you will find that there's a huge rise in tax receipts in the last 2 quarters. That's why GDP was much higher than GVA, the difference being indirect taxation. So if they are going to get this large amount of revenue, they have to simultaneously try and expand capex and at the same time bring down the fiscal deficit. From 5.8% of GDP, it is supposed to come down to 5.1% in the current fiscal year and back down to 4.5% next year. Will they be able to do it? In normal circumstances, it would be very difficult. But if they are going to have this bonanza of tax revenue, which came in the last 2 quarters, then it would appear that, finally, different Modi things are paying off. The difficult period of COVID, Ukraine, El Nino, that difficult period is over. We are getting into an easier period where it will be possible to run with the hare and hunt with the hounds at the same time. So I would not expect new directions. And I think the markets will also be quite happy with that. The markets would worry about new directions, but new directions, they can strain coalition ties and so on. Because whenever you go have a big new direction, you will create some losers. The moment you create some losers, there are problems. If you're going to be carrying on roughly on the same path, then you are producing gainers without many losers.
Sir, do you see a more consultative approach to decision making at the center, like specifically on economic policies?
I think in terms of how capex is distributed among different regions, that might be influenced by these consultations. Modi is very keen and will continue to be very keen on semiconductors, chip fabrication, green hydrogen. These are the new areas in which he has been wanting to push, and he will go further ahead. I will not be surprised if Mr. Chandrababu Naidu says that you must put up a large silicon fabrication facility in my state. And he will have to remind everybody it's no longer Hyderabad. It will have to be Andhra Pradesh. Hyderabad is now another territory. But I'm sure he would love to get back part of that silicon business back into Andhra Pradesh, having lost Telangana as it is.
Sir, you mentioned Mr. Chandrababu Naidu. You've seen him, in his previous avatars also, in United Front convener and later in Vajpayee's government as well. He has been a tough bargainer. Plus, he has also, he's wrested a lot of things for Hyderabad, as you'd mentioned. And he's also been a slippery ally. How do you see this playing out? Do you think he can upset the coalition balance, or there's too much happening? Because right now, he does not need BJP in Andhra Pradesh, but BJP needs him at the center.
No, there's no problem, I think. In terms of providing him with funding or various other kinds of support, he will get it from New Delhi, and there will be no conflict of interest, I don't think. Chandrababu Naidu's first job, I think, will be to revive his great new city which he was going to build. And then Jagan Reddy came and said, nothing doing, I'm not going to have this. Basically, it's, Chandra Babu's guys had bought up all the land around there, and Jagan didn't want to be left out of that particular thing. Well, okay, the circle has come round, and I do hope they go ahead with this. They had even hired consultants, they had hired potential builders, but for various reasons, it did not go through. I do hope it goes full steam ahead. I think that particular maxi city building can give a huge boost to the whole state of Andhra Pradesh and help it to take off. It will, Mr. Babu's financial fortunes will also take off. So they have a common interest out there. So let's see what happens out there.
Sir, how do you see, I'll take you back to the vote. How do you see this vote as? We had this entire segment of Labharthis, we thought, in 2019 elections, who spearheaded his victory. Do you think it was a vote on welfareism, or what was it on? Because joblessness, when we traveled, joblessness was one thing that people really pointed out. Is that an economic challenge that Modi will have to address in the third term?
There is always the problem, and it arises out of a third-rate educational system which keeps producing unemployable graduates. I would also say that while, yes, you do hear this thing about unemployment is a big problem, why is Mr. Modi not creating jobs? But if that was the critical issue in this election, how do you explain the fact that the BJP absolutely swept Madhya Pradesh, which is no champion in job creation or in education, please? So, nevertheless, he swept everything there, and yet they came a cropper in Uttar Pradesh. So, two backward states competing with, they completely contrary results. 6 months ago, there were the state elections, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. And, you sweep Madhya Pradesh, but you do very badly in Rajasthan. Again, why? What is the overall factor? All I can say is that perhaps, this was an election without big themes, without big national themes. I suspect you will have to find a lot of very, very local factors that brought about these very different results in Uttar Pradesh on the one hand and in Madhya Pradesh on the other hand. One thing we can probably say is that Mr. Yogi Adityanath is no longer Prime Minister in waiting, as some people had thought that he was. Let us see how long he lasts, whether he lasts. I would imagine that there would be some big political changes made by Mr. Modi. But will any of these tackle? I mean, the economy has 4 weak spots. Employment, as we have said, education, as we have said, environment. I mean, we have 6 of the 10 most polluted cities in the world, and nothing is improving. And finally, there is the police judicial system. The police judicial system has never worked well, and as we know, in the last 5 years, has been used selectively to punish foes and reward friends. I can imagine that this is one of the things that might have got the goat of some voters. But at the end of it all, it looks to me that there were detailed local reasons for the BJP's poor performance in Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan.
My TMB co-host Anirban Chaudhary is here. Anirban, you want to ask something?
Sure. Mr. I just wanted to ask you, the fact that a coalition government with a lot of support from others is not seen as strong as, with one that is led by just one party. Do you see a kind of softening in capex cycles and investments from the private sector going forward because of what has happened in these elections?
Right now, if you say, will this be a problem for capex? I would say no. Definitely not. The main problem for capex, I think, would have come if there was a problem on tax collection. But that tax collection, if you look at the last 2 quarters, the GDP data, it has been huge, more than 20-30%. So with that kind of tax buoyancy coming out of your ears as you go into this year, I think there will be enough money for various other things, for bringing down the fiscal deficit and for capex. The budget is going to come out in a month or so. Whatever I'm saying, I think you will see it's going to be confirmed there.
Do you see a stronger opposition going forward?
Frankly, the government has got a clear majority. Beyond the point, as they say, Jo Jeta wo Sikandar. If you're in the saddle, then what matters is who won, not what the margin of victory is. Margin of victory, kya farak hota hai? Jeete, Sikandar ho gaya. So it is very difficult to see the the opposition will be more raucous. You may see more protests and people walking into the well of the house, that usual kind of drama. But is the opposition capable of changing government policy, especially when the government itself intends to go in this continued direction? I don't think you'll see very much. Mr. Rahul Gandhi, of course, claimed Mr. Modi will come to power and he will change the constitution and abolish all reservations and, that kind of inane stuff. There is no question of Modi ever trying for that. And right now, he is not in a position to amend the constitution at all.
Do you see a more consensual prime minister? Because we saw very aggressive BJP under him. With the allies and them being restricted under 240, do you see a little change in the way he conducts the government?
I think Mr. Modi will have to change his attitude. He's used to laying down things and just seeing that they're done. He has not faced any serious opposition in Gujarat for 15 years and then again at the center for 10 years. I don't think he's used to having to forge a consensus. He's used to having his own way. So let us see. Politicians are infinitely adaptable. I doubt very much whether Mr. Modi is so ramrod stiff that he's incapable of bending once in a while. In the old days, before he became chief minister, he must have bowed 10,000 times to various people. He can do a little bowing and scraping once again. No problem.
The subtext of the election results is rather interesting. Let's talk about Andhra Pradesh and Chandrababu Naidu. He is well known as the man behind the throne, one who has been a kingmaker, but never the king himself. As the United Front convener in the late 1990s, he had kept a motley group of political parties together and gave India two prime ministers, H.D. Deve Gowda and I.K. Gujral. But what is little known is that Naidu was the man who kept prime ministers waiting on hold. Officers remember how Naidu was once in a meeting with his secretaries when a call was transferred and the operator was heard saying Gaud Garu. Naidu kept the line on hold for a minute and the officers present presumed that it was his Revenue and Rehabilitation Minister Tula Devinder Gaud. Later, they realized it was not Gaud Garu, but Gowda, Prime Minister H.D. Deve Gowda, who was waiting on the line. But what can we expect at the center now? I'm joined by Professor Sanjay Kumar of the Center for the Study of Developing Societies. So how do you see the role of regional parties? Specifically, do you see that, down south, BRS or YSRCP, they could face an identity crisis of sorts?
You have mentioned about two regional parties. BJD has also not performed well. YSRCP has not performed well. But look at the other regional parties which has performed so well. Look at the DMK, look at TDP, look at TMC, look at RJD in Bihar, look at the other regional parties in Bihar, whether they are ally of Congress or BJP, and look at the performance of Samajwadi Party in UP. All these are regional parties and they have performed extremely well. In Andhra, the contest was really between the two regional parties. So if the contest is between two regional parties, one party has to go down. That was the reason why YSRCP has not performed well. I would think that there is some question mark on Aam Aadmi Party's performance. Aam Aadmi Party would have expected a better performance from Delhi and Punjab, but they failed to perform as well as they would have expected. But I think regional parties have played a very important role in these elections.
Sanjay ji, how do you see the governance and policy changing at the center with BJP trying to balance all its coalition partners?
See, if a party forms a government with a massive majority, and if the party forms a government which is dependent upon the allies, there is always a difference in which you run the government, the way you take initiatives about forming policies and programs. So BJP, though technically has been running a coalition government in 2014 and after 2019 elections, but BJP was running a government where BJP had a sizable majority. There were a lot of decisions which BJP was able to take even without the consultation of the allies. Now, when BJP forms the government along with the allies, this is going to be a coalition government in a true sense. BJP will have to be dependent upon the allies partner because BJP do not have a majority of its own. So I think we will see more consultation, more discussion whenever a policy is being initiated, whenever the government needs to embark upon a new programs and policies. So I think the nature of policy making, the nature in which the discussion and the debates will take place in the house, that's going to have some bearing of this. That's going to change once this government takes oath and we have a new government in place.
How do you see decisions that they were planning to take, like specifically on one nation, one election? Do you think that that could also take backseat?
Very difficult for me to say whether it is going to take back seat or not. But imagine if BJP had got a majority of its own and a good majority, I think BJP would have immediately initiated steps in order to move ahead in this whole idea of new one nation, one election. But now this will require greater consultation, not only with the allies, but maybe also with the opposition parties, because opposition is also in sizable number in the Lok Sabha now. So I think at least BJP will try to go slow on some of the policies which BJP was hoping to take forward, because they were also hoping to get a majority. So go slow on some of these policies are going to be the obvious thing in the new government. Now we can expect more fireworks because the opposition is in sizable number and the government, the BJP, would be dependent upon its allies. So yes, we can expect more fireworks in 5 years from now.
As the results poured in, markets did not react too well to a bit of political uncertainty. Anirban spoke to Aditya Khemka of Incred Asset Management to understand who were the biggest losers and what can we expect from the markets.
So Aditya, we've seen quite a markets rout. On the day of the results, investors on Dalal Street lost 30 lakh crore rupees, because share prices of especially public sector companies and some other private companies like the Adani Group businesses really plummeted. On Wednesday, they of course recovered close to about 13 lakh crore rupees. But this doesn't seem to be ending soon, right? How do you see this?
So I think the market, the way it fell yesterday, the key losers were actually on the public sector units, which included obviously public sector banks and certain other public sector enterprises like REC, PFC, etc., which had actually run up significantly in the past 12 months. So that was, I think, the biggest pocket of the market that fell the most yesterday. Fall was obviously very widespread also. So there were other counters also that declined. But I think the most extreme impact was seen on the public sector units.
And do you see this continuing over the next 1 week in the very, very short term, of course, but
it potentially could. And I would say, ideally, if you look at these public sector units, the historical multiples and valuations that they have traded at, these stocks had actually far, outperformed their own history in terms of valuations. So they were much more expensive than they have been in the past. Let me give you some data point here, right? So if you look at Nifty 50's 25-year history, for a period of 25 years, the average price to book Nifty 50 has traded at is around 2.8 times, 2.8. And day before yesterday, we had reached Nifty 50 valuations of 3.7 times price to book. So we were almost at a 40% premium, to our own historical multiples. And therefore, a correction was due in many other stocks, other than the PSUs. And what happened yesterday, I think, was, when the market is too expensive, when these stocks are too expensive, they look for an excuse to correct. And hence, I think the election results just acted as a catalyst for a correction which was anyways due. And hence, is the correction over after yesterday's fall? Probably not. You may see more pressure on these stocks in the near term. See, there is no doubt that the Modi government has done a great job for the public sector units. They have brought them to the forefront and they've activated these units to be productive and efficient. However, if you look at the valuation metrics of some of these stocks, they had just completely gone out of whack. And I don't think even if the Modi government comes back into power, the NDA comes back into power, that kind of valuations should be seen again. I think those valuations were a bit extreme to begin with. And hence, yesterday's correction is a healthy correction and some more could happen in the near term.
But beyond these corrections, do you see sort of weakening confidence because of the fact that it's no longer one party only calling the shots? It's not emanating from one man from which, the markets and the investors gained a lot of confidence. This is going to be, other parties are going to have a say going forward. This is going to be a slightly weaker government, if you can, in one sense, going forward. So do you see the confidence sort of weakening and taking some more time to come back? This is beyond the correction that you spoke about, of course.
No, so if you talk about the medium term or the longer term, I don't think, economic growth of India is under question because of what happened yesterday, right? Over the longer term, stocks are slaves of cash flows, and cash flows come from policy making. And I don't think yesterday's election results are going to change the trajectory of policy making in India. Yes, it's a slightly weaker government compared to what we had for the past 8 years, but that doesn't imply that the policies of the government will be materially different from what they have been for the past 8 years. Even if you see what the prime ministerial candidate of the BJP spoke yesterday after the election results were more or less confirmed, he spoke of the same points that he had been speaking of for the past 7-8 years. So clearly, policy making should not ideally be any different than what it has been for the past 8 years. And if that continues, if there is continuity in policies, I don't feel that there should be a reason for the markets to do anything different than what they were expected to do pre-elections. And I think India, if you look at it, India is in a sweet spot compared to other global economies, emerging economies or developed economies. So if you're a global investor, right, you today cannot have any less allocation to India than you had day before yesterday.
Indeed, very interesting times ahead as a new government is sworn in. Will Andhra Bhavan on Delhi's Ashoka Road once again emerge as the place where important decisions are taken, just like the 1990s? Or will Nitish Kumar switch sides? But this is all I have for you. With this episode, we are wrapping up our special elections podcast, Polls on My Pod. Hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. This is your host Nidhi Sharma signing off. This episode was brought to you by sound designer Indraneel Bhattacharjee and producer Vinay Joshi. Executive producers Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Barman. Thank you for listening, and if you like this episode, do spread the word. All new episodes of the Morning Brief podcast drop every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a great week ahead.